Now, before we dive into today's verse, I want to ask you a question. What do you think is the most important quality in a leader? Is it power, wealth, intelligence, or maybe charisma? In today's passage, Jesus is going to surprise us by choosing 12 men who may not have had these qualities on the outside, but who possessed something far more valuable in the eyes of God. Let's read Matthew chapter 9, verses 9 to 13. As Jesus was walking along, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at the tax collector's booth, and he said to him, "Follow me." And Matthew got up, left everything, and followed Jesus. Going on, Jesus saw a man named Levi sitting in the tax collector's booth, and he said to him, "Follow me." And Levi got up, left everything, and followed Jesus. Likewise, as Jesus was having dinner at Matthew's house, many tax collectors and sinners came and ate with Jesus and his disciples. When the Pharisees saw this, they asked his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" On hearing this, Matthew 9:10 minus 13. Now, in the context of our series, we know that Jesus has just come from his 40 days of fasting in the wilderness. Satan tempted him there, but Jesus resisted the devil and came out of the wilderness with the Holy Spirit as his guide. Now, the first thing we see him doing is calling his first 4 disciples. 2 pairs of brothers, Peter and Andrew, and James and John. There are a couple of interesting things to note here. First, Jesus was walking along the shore of the Sea of Galilee. When he finds Simon, Peter, and Andrew, they were fishermen. So the word walking could also mean by the lake or by the seashore. So Jesus was by the seashore when he saw them. Second, these men were not only called to be disciples, which means students or learners, but they were also told to follow Jesus. Jesus basically recruits them into his ministry, telling them, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." And so they leave their nets immediately and follow Jesus. Interestingly, the Greek word for nets here is diokida, which means providers. So Jesus is saying to them, leave your job of providing for yourself, and I will teach you how to provide for others. Also, notice that it doesn't say that they quit fishing altogether, but rather that they stopped working for themselves and started working for Jesus. You might say, well, that's easy for them. They were fishermen. They didn't have any other jobs. Well, let's look at Matthew and Levi. Both were tax collectors. Not only were they despised by the people because they were cheating them, but they were also hated by the religious leaders because they weren't religious enough. So not only do they have to deal with the hatred of the people, but they also have to deal with the hatred of the religious elite. And yet, both leave everything and follow Jesus. So what's the point here? Why is Jesus calling sinners? Well, first, let's define our terms. Who is a sinner? Someone who misses the mark of God's righteousness. And the only person who can define that standard is God. So if God defines sin, then God is the only one who can forgive sin. And guess who wants to forgive sins? Jesus! Secondly, Jesus is showing us the kind of person God desires in his kingdom. It's not the religious, the self-righteous, or the elite, but the humble, the broken, and the repentant. Lastly, Jesus is showing us the kind of person who will enter God's kingdom. It's not the person who thinks they deserve it, but the person who feels they do deserve it and are in desperate need of God's mercy. Notice that Matthew and Levi didn't say, "Why are you choosing me?" Instead, they simply said, "Yes, send me." There is a beautiful humility in that. As we continue in this series, keep in mind that God still calls sinners to be saints. In fact, you can't be a saint without being a sinner saved by grace. Until next time, shalom.